Welcome back, climbers. I'm your co-host, Kaleigh Floyd, and this is another episode of Climbing Mount CMMC. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Climbing Mount CMMC, the podcast. We are so excited to share with you guys a new series that we're starting, 4-part series, and we're kind of calling it Let's Get Real, because what we're doing in this series is really talking about the realistic expectations when you are starting your CMMC journey. Now, Bobby has gotten hit in the face with a lot of these, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we're doing this right now as a company. So we just wanted to share with you guys our experience so far, what we've learned from it. We're going to do 4 episodes after this one, and we're going to talk about 4 different realistic expectations. Now, these 4 are cost, resource, impact, and time. And I'm really excited because in today's episode, Bobby is going to break these down, just give you a little bit of a Cliff Notes version of what we're going to talk about in each one of these. So without further ado, let's talk about the first one, which is cost. Now that's a really big one to start it off. It's a heavy hitter. So Bobby, do you want to share your experience with the realistic expectations when it comes to the cost of it?
Yeah, we went ahead and did a podcast last year, right?
Yes, we did.
That went over this, and we tried to be very transparent through it. So in this episode where we talk about costs, we're going to try to give everybody a better update about what we've seen, about what we're projecting the potential cost to be now for clients. We didn't really talk about that as much in that podcast. It was more about our journey. And so we'll definitely talk about that some as well, just to get everybody more up to speed about those kinds of realities. Because, CMMC is still in its infancy. The certification process is, the cap is out and how it's supposed to happen, but it's still in proposed. There's just a lot of things that are still being finalized. The final rule is not quite yet dropped at the time of this recording. And so all of that kind of culminates together to say that while we can talk about costs and how it's affecting us now, it could be different in a year, right? Some more vendors might come on that might make things more friendly. We'll talk about some of that as well.
Right. That's a good point.
As other organizations get more efficient at how to do it. Remember back in the day when DVDs first came out, they were like $1 billion. Like if you bought a 10-pack, they were like a small fortune. And then eventually, as the manufacturers became more efficient at it, the cost dropped, and CMMC will be no different in that way. Now, it won't be such a percentage, probably drastic drop, but there's definitely going to be efficiencies made, and so some of the costs will drop. But, if you're last to the bowl in the CMMC program, other organizations are going to be getting contracts for you. So, you might think, well, then I'll just wait. If a large percentage of your business is through contracts, it takes a year. At least to get up to speed to do it. So you don't want to be the last dog in the bowl. That's a bad day.
Right. And so you said this a little bit about how we already covered costs in sort of a different perspective, right, from our perspective, but this one is diving more into a few different topics. There's one thing that I did want to highlight. The cost for the tools that you're going to have to add on as a company when climbing this journey of CMMC, which that's something that we kind of touched on in our other podcasts for ourselves, but you've learned even more about that and how much more it costs, even from recording that podcast. So just like things like that we're going to add in that we didn't necessarily talk about in the last one.
Yeah, we're going to, once again, try to be as transparent as we can. So it's definitely something you want to tune in to get a better idea. Yeah. What we're going to talk about may not necessarily perfectly translate to you, but I think that can kind of give you a general idea. Well, if he's here or they're thinking that's where they are, I think it might be logical to assume I might be here.
Right.
And that at least kind of starts to give you some different points of data that you can then start to kind of map your location in the 3-dimensional space of CMMC.
Yes. Yeah. No, that's a great point. So once we talk about cost, we're also going to be talking about resources. So one thing that we mentioned when we were creating these was you said, what qualifies as a good resource, right? We've said a lot of the words like snake oil out there, right? We've said that a couple of times in this podcast and stuff like that. So do you want to dive into some of the subjects that we'll be talking about in that podcast about resources?
Yeah, the ecosystem as it's evolving, you've got some pretenders, I guess, for a lack of a better word. And what do I mean by that? People that say they want to help you get where you need to get in the CMMC ecosystem. But like, are they going to walk onto the field with you when it's game day?
Mhm.
That's really the best analogy.
Yeah.
They're like, I'm team you. I'm gonna be on your team. But then when it comes to game day, they don't show up.
Mhm.
They're not there during your assessment. They can't give you evidence to show how they're helping you meet it. They just want to be there to take your money, kind of give you some suggestions on to get there. But when it comes time to actually be there, did they get a level 2 certification or a level 1, depending on, you don't have a certification for one, it's self-assessment, but
Mhm.
you get my point, is like, they have to know where they're going to be in the ecosystem and commit
Mhm.
to be that in that ecosystem. So when they're supporting their clients, and this is from an MSP or other types of consultants, so you really want to know, right, those resources and the people that you're going to partner with, where they specifically are in the ecosystem, right?
Right.
Because there's lots of companies that say, I'll help you get there. But really what they're trying to do is they just want to participate as best they can, but they really want to have their feet outside and inside the ecosystem because they don't want to truly commit to it.
Yeah.
And we've made no bones about where we are in that perspective.
Mhm.
We're all in.
Yeah.
And that's what you really want to be thinking about, is whoever you're partnering with, you want to understand how far in they are into the ecosystem. They're a C3PO. Well, they're fully committed then. They went through actually being assessed by DIPCAC.
Mhm.
It doesn't really get that much more committed than that. So that's where, as you go to connect with different people and organizations inside and start to leverage and lean on them, you want to know for a fact where they're going to be. So this podcast is really going to be directed towards understanding, the wisdom around who you're going to partner with, who you're going to work with, and just get a better understanding so that when you are going to go on your journey, the last thing you want to do is turn around and, you're the only person charging the hill. Everybody's gone.
Right.
That's a bad day. That's a very, very
Mhm.
bad day.
Mhm. Yeah, and you could tackle this one too, like in two different ways. One, you could be an MSP listening to this that's like us, that needs to understand who might need to come alongside you as an MSP if you're going through your CMMC journey. But you could also be a business owner or somebody that needs to be certified and is starting that journey as a company and needs to know who is on their side and who needs to be on their side so you can successfully accomplish that. And I am
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
excited. I'm so excited for that one because it really is important. I've seen it in our business so far with the people that you partner with can either make your life easier or harder, right? So
Right.
you want it to be easier, and we've really enjoyed our partnerships as well along this journey. So
And it's like, it's that challenge doesn't matter whether you're someone who needs to get assessed and you're just what they would call an OSC, or organization seeking assessment, so
yeah.
OSA. But if you're just trying to be an organization and you might need to partner with an MSP, you've got to think about where they're going to be. But if you're an MSP and you're partnering with a vendor and they're like, oh man, we got you. Yeah, we're going to get our FedRAMP this year. And, we know you're going for your certification and we're going to be ready for you, buddy. Don't worry. And it comes time to do your assessment and you're like, do you have your FedRAMP? Things kind of happen. We didn't really get ready.
Right.
So your whole SIM tool just got thrown out.
Yeah.
Because so much of your data is being sent to that, and the vendor that you might have been counting on they just exit stage right, and you're like, well, what are we going to do now?
Yeah.
So you've got to really think about those types of things, and it's not just the SMB that needs to think about it. The managed service provider needs to think about it. Lots of organizations need to really think about that because it's going to have a huge impact. And when it comes time to do your assessment, you got to have all the evidence and be ready to do it.
Yes. Yeah.
And you can't have anybody leaving on you at the last minute. That's going to be a bad day.
No. And what's funny is you literally said the word of the next thing that we're going to talk about the next episode after that is the impact that it's going to have on your organization. So I think we kind of place this as number 3 because a lot of the things that we talk about in the first 2 also have that impact that we're going to talk about in the third one. But a lot of people are not prepared for the change that is about to happen, right? So we talk about that a lot. So talk more about the impact and the change that you're going to speak about in that episode.
Unless your organization is already in a highly compliant environment, in other words, you're doing work that is very, very, very heavily regulated and compliant based, this is going to be a big punch in the face for you. What I mean by that is, do you have a change control process in your organization already defined that you thoroughly follow? Not just the people that are, pushing papers, but like top down, a change control process that everybody inside your organization follows. And the list just goes on and on of these different practices you're going to have to follow when you adopt CMMC.
Right.
Not a lot of organizations have those processes robustly built out. They may have been doing DoD contracts for years. They may have signed all the paperwork that said that they were supposed to do it, but it doesn't mean that they've been doing it. And if that's the case, then it's going to be a bit of punch in the face. And you can't just turn to a company and say, hey, can you make this happen? We don't really want to change. We don't really want to do anything different. We just want you to get us certified. And as it's kind of like, I want to be a sumo wrestler, but I want to stay on the couch and I don't want to change, and I don't want to change my eating habits.
Right.
Can you help that? No, like if you want to be out there, you're going to have to wear that weird garb. You're going to have to eat a lot. You're going to have to do the little leg thing. And then
what
you're
a
going to have
visual
to
representation.
But like, that's the truth, right?
Yeah, it is.
And it starts with leadership. Like your leadership has to understand this. If your leadership's like, just handle it, I'm going to give this to the intern, just make this thing go away so that we keep our contracts, you're screwed.
Yeah.
Because you really have to understand that your whole organization is going to change as far as in those parts. Because even, let's just say that a part of your business is going to be in scope, right? That you build kind of this little enclaved section. That still doesn't mean that your admin, your HR processes that have to revolve around that, your change control processes, you could even try to keep change control specifically to that in-scope stuff. But the processes all have to come from management and upper management and flow down.
Yeah.
The HR department has to handle those things. All of that kind of stuff is typically large-scale enterprise-wide that have to be and part of that. So it's just this assumption that you can sort of dip your toe into it and not have to fully immerse your organization.
Yeah.
You can do scoping to kind of reduce some of that, but it's still going to be organizationally impact wide.
Right.
It just can't, that can't be understated.
Yeah.
So you just need to wrap your head around that.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're an MSP, oh my Lord, the change that has happened for us. And granted, we have really kind of 2 different businesses right now. We have our commercial side and our CMMC side.
Mm-hmm.
And we basically had to build the CMMC piece that is going to handle, but so much of what we do comes across into the enterprise side all the way around everything and how we operate. And that's a good thing. We're safer, more secure in how we operate. But we're going to talk about all of that and sort of get real about our experiences and help you guys try to be more realistic about that as well when you do that journey.
Yes. And the last thing that we're going to talk about, that we're going to discuss the realistic truth about, is the time that it takes to do all of this, right? So not only is it costly, not only does it require a lot of resources and research about those resources for you, and the impact is huge inside your organization. Also, the time it takes to get all of this set up, unless you're perfect, like Bobby was saying before, and you did all of this before even going on your CMMC journey, the time is extensive and a lot more than maybe some would expect. So do you want to talk about the time piece about it and what you're going to specifically talk about in that episode?
Yeah. Time. Man, I wish I had more of it. I can tell you that.
Totally. Yeah,
Uh,
that's true.
the reason why I say that is I'm the CEO of my company, right? And I have to run my company, but at the same time, I'm playing a big part in our CMMC journey. Like I've had to split myself into two, and it's been a tremendous amount of work and effort on my part. I can't, and we'll get into that a lot more about what that looks like. And even then, there are things that have to be in place before you can really quantify time. And that's the reason why it's last. All right. We didn't talk about it first. And the reason why is all of those other things have to be figured out before you can even start thinking about your time. You've got to have the right people and knowledge to pull it off.
Yeah.
So when you see these assumptions in time, they're assuming you've got that all figured out. Well, guess what? Figuring that out takes time too.
Right.
Right. So are you going to try to do CMMC more yourself? Well, I can say it's going to take you a year or two, just knowledge of immersing yourself before you're really going to have enough understanding of that ecosystem before you could even possibly guide a company through that journey. So if you're like, hey, intern, you got your Net Plus, Security Plus, or whatever, you should be okay with security stuff. Here, help us with this CMMC thing. And, here's a budget and just make it happen. Like that person's doomed.
Right.
They can't do it on their own. It's going to take them a year or two just to figure out really that ecosystem. And that was if they really were serious about it. Maybe you let them go for a CCP and try to get, more studying. And that's a good thing. But, that comes back to then becoming more realistic time-wise with what you're trying to accomplish. The shorter time frame you want, the more you're going to have to involve resources outside of your company that have that knowledge and are ready to rock. Okay. Which again, this goes back to knowing where they're at. If you're going to have that company involved in your ecosystem and helping you get your journey, you better know where they are in the system themselves.
Right.
Where are they in the ecosystem? So there's just a lot to kind of think about when you're going after this challenge, is that when you're thinking about that time, if I had to guess right now, based on all the knowledge that we've learned and Kaleigh have learned, Adam, my leadership staff, all of us have learned, it would take 8 months for us just going crazy. Adam working full time, me working on it part time to be ready. I would say between 6 to 8 months, easy. And we've already done it once now for us, right? So that hopefully speaks some volumes about how freaking hard this is.
Definitely.
Because you've got to, it's not about building a system that people could do things in. Okay. It's about building a system of people and how they operate around that system.
Yeah.
Right. So that's changing the culture of your team, how they operate, how they're connecting with that system, how they're using it. Because you could build this perfect CMMC environment, but if you have trained your staff, they don't know how to work with it, they're going to screw it up the moment they start working in it. And then you're going to no longer be compliant anymore. Right. So you got to factor in the time to get your staff up to speed, to understand how to be accurate and compliant while they operate their business, and to find an organization outside of your company to come in and understand who you are and how you operate so that you can continue to do business like you're used to in a compliant fashion in a CMMC ecosystem they built. It's going to take some time. And if anyone's saying anything otherwise, they're probably lying to you. I have yet to see something that fully integrates all of that. It's kind of like someone says, hey, I can build you a great website in 2 weeks. Like, you don't know that company. Even if you could build it that fast, you need to understand who they are so you can put whatever they're doing on the site that's accurate. Does that make sense?
Right.
So totally that whole time piece, that needs to be factored in. So you're looking at least a year for you to really pull this off, honestly, to be able to do it. And so if you're waiting so long before you start to try to pull that trigger, it can be a super challenge. So time's definitely something that is a big one that a lot of people underestimate. So that we're going to do that last, because you need to make sure you're getting all that right before we really get into the nitty gritty of that.
So, Bobby, is there any other things that you want to talk about, between these 4 realistic expectations that we're going to discuss before we close it out today?
Yeah, I think no one does CMMC in a box, in a vacuum of understanding. So we're going to be learning. Everybody's going to be learning through this. We're going to evolve. We're going to get better at how we try to approach this and start to understand how to do it cheaper, how to do it in less time. So the video that this series, in 2 years, you might go, oh, we're such kids. We're so silly. This is how you can do it better. This is going to evolve over time. This is going to get better as we go to refine and work on it, because there's just not enough people doing it right now. But it doesn't matter. The clock is ticking, and certifications are going to start happening. Contracts are going to start dropping. The primes and subprimes are going to start requiring and having conversations with their contract organizations to say, hey, we're going to need you to get this done, because we don't want that 10 or 15 or 20% business to fall off the table. I know they're doing it in a phased rollout, but I need plenty of you guys to be ready to do it so that we can bid on it. So while it may be a phased approach, they're going to be pushing and putting pressure on that to happen. So I think that's really important to think about. And then, I've just seen advertisements for organizations like on Reddit and other things like that saying, we can get you ready in 2 to 3 weeks. That's like someone telling you, I can guarantee you a return on your investment. Like, if you hear that, you got to run, right? That is just, it's misleading at best, and it's a lie at worst.
Yeah. And one thing that's for sure is this podcast is always going to be real with what we've learned. We're going to be truthful with what we learned. That's what we believe as an organization. That's why we have our name as Axiom, is because we believe in the truth. And so I hope that you guys can always turn to this podcast and turn to our journey, no matter how much it evolves and changes, like Bobby was saying, that we will be truthful with where we're at and what we've learned. So let's get real.
Well, thank you, Kaleigh, for helping guide me down, getting the opportunity to share what I have a passion for, which is CMMC, and trying to just be realistic. And I think this is going to be a fun series. We're not 100% sure if we're going to do all of them specifically in order. We might slide some other ones in between there, but we are going to go through just like Kaleigh outlined. And if you have some other suggestions or topics you want us to talk about, please hit us up in the comments or whatever media that you happen to find us and connect to us on, and make sure you click on follow, and that we're knowing that you're, bated breath on the next episode. So, again, thank you so much, Kaleigh, and for all of you joining us, just remember to keep on climbing.
Make sure to follow us on LinkedIn and YouTube to stay up to date on the latest CMMC news. We hope you guys enjoyed today's episode and listen out for the next one. But until then, keep on climbing.